All right, I've got John Kurtz of the John Kurtz YouTube channel and the Three Maw podcast. Let's talk a little Kansas State today. Take a quick break from the realignment news. I got an eye roll from you when we talked about this prior to recording, but last year 9-4, all 4 games, 1 score losses. Coming off of that, I mean, I think there's some excitement of what could have been. It is hope season. It's belief season right now before we get into fall camp and into the season. But what is the mood, the general mood of the fan base right now at Kansas State?
Pretty high, and it really centers on one guy, and that's Avery Johnson, the quarterback this year, who is debatably, I mean, the highest rated recruit that K-State's pulled in. It kind of depends on specifics and where you're looking. And in terms of hype, I mean, he's right up there. Recruiting ranking wise, like they got Josh Freeman once upon a time to flip from Nebraska, and he was a very highly rated recruit. Avery Johnson's the highest rated that they've had, certainly at the quarterback position and basically overall since then. Dual threat guy, got a chance to play last year. He scored 5 rushing touchdowns in a game against Texas Tech, which really showcased his athleticism. And he got a chance against NC State in the bowl game, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, to play the entire game. People will point at the low completion percentage, but he threw about 6 passes away, didn't take a sack, didn't throw a pick, just really made good decisions and seems wise beyond his years as a true freshman. And that is the reason. I mean, there's going to be a lot of focus on Will Howard this year, K-State's quarterback the last few years, who transferred to Ohio State. I mean, make no mistake, that was K-State basically choosing Avery Johnson. At Texas, there's enough money and prestige to go around to hold on to both Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. At virtually everywhere else in the country, you're not going to be able to hold on to 2 guys like that. Will Howard won a Big 12 championship at K-State. He wants to go play. But K-State knew, like, this is the guy. He's got it. He's got really special talent. Coaches would tell you from within the program, at least one that I can remember hearing from last year, like this guy's got like Heisman ability. Now they would say that like, kind of hush hush. It's not like they were trying to put those sort of expectations on him, but the New York Post literally just did it a couple of days ago, sometime late last week, picked him to win the Heisman. Andy Staples has been really high on that. So that's the guy that's leading a lot of this. K-State has really upped its talent level, relatively speaking. I mean, it's always been a program that wins with generally 3-star players and coaching them up and developing them. Chris Kleiman's been able to up that talent level a little bit the last few years. And guys like Dylan Edwards, who have come in from Colorado, who was a 4-star kid who at one point was committed to Notre Dame, then flipped. He was committed to K-State, flipped to Notre Dame, then flipped to Colorado. Now he's back in Manhattan, a guy that played with Avery Johnson as a kid, really, really talented backfield. And DJ Giddens is, I think, one of the most unheralded running backs in the country, 1,500-plus total yards last year. Just a guy that's been really rock solid at running back and also gives them a really formidable backfield. So the overall talent level has risen. The program has been good the last 2 years, winning a Big 12 championship, following it up with a 9-win season last year, and now K-State fans kind of think this is the time where you'll take the next step because, look, one, the Big 12 is wide open, and you have a playoff spot if you win the league, but also because they have Avery Johnson running the show at QB.
Yeah, very quarterback-heavy league, and there's a lot of really good quarterback play in the Big 12, which will be interesting to see kind of how that shakes out. Also wide open, you mentioned, and that is true of the Big 12 more than any other conference, I think, in the country. Expectations for 2024, I mean, you kind of mentioned them a little bit there, but, man, Vegas win totals of either 9, 9.5 at different places that I could find, places taking bets for win totals. Man, if you exceed expectations just a little bit, I mean, 10 wins has to get you really, really close to that conference title game. I don't know if anybody's running the table with no losses. I mean, you could certainly see a couple of one-loss Big 12 teams, but, is it kind of, you need to make it to the Big 12 championship or bust kind of expectations for Kansas State this year, even with how wide open it is?
Yeah, I'm viewing it like I think most people would view it. The fan base standpoint is like, yeah, get to Arlington, get to the Big 12 championship game or bust. There are some that would tell you like, yeah, obviously Big 12 championship game and college football playoff or bust. But I mean, everything I said about Avery Johnson, it is your first year with a new starting quarterback, even though he played some last year. There are some holes to fill. I mean, they definitely lost some talent. I think the defensive line is one area to definitely watch out for. They've got a lot of young talent, but that's kind of the deal with the roster. They have so much young talent where you feel great about spots. And I know a lot of the coaches would tell you they feel at multiple positions they're as talented as they've been since Chris Kleiman's staff showed up in 2019. but it's not a lot of proven production, and that's why it probably looked weird. K-State was picked second in the Big 12 just behind Utah, but yet they had not a single player on the preseason All Big 12 team that came out, and that's because like so many of these guys are unproven, and their best player, DJ Giddens, is at a logjam position in the conference with guys in front of him. So they do have some guys that need to prove things, but I think most reasonable fans would say this probably is a year with a manageable enough schedule that you should be able to at least get to the Big 12 championship game. If you're looking beyond that, like next year, and this is always a tough thing to say because in the era of the transfer portal and NIL, I mean, it's just so hard to count on who you're actually keeping around next year. But because of a lot of that youthfulness and the young talent that they have, and Avery Johnson potentially returning next year's team on paper, if they were to keep everybody, looks like, man, all right, like that's a team, like that would be the year. In the old system, when you're like not worried about guys leaving, coming in and out, and the transfer portal didn't matter as much, you'd be looking on paper and circling 2025 for K-State and saying like that is the year, like they can compete and really make noise. Maybe that team can somehow find a way to get to the semis in the playoff. Like I think K-State fans would feel that good about that team next year, but they still feel very good about the team this year and that they should have every chance to compete with Utah, Oklahoma State, KU, whoever you have up there at the top of the Big 12.
What's your biggest concern for Kansas State this season?
Probably, if you want to boil it down to a position group, it's like the interior of the defensive line. Defensive line as a whole, but they have so much young talent at defensive end. I feel better about that. Does feel like they had some misses in recruiting trail and transfer portal wise on the interior of the defensive line. And Uso Seumalo, who's their best defensive tackle, spent time being injured last year. So I worry there. Even about front end talent, but also just about the depth that they have at that position. And the passing game, I think, look, Avery Johnson, I think, is a star. He can definitely throw the ball. If you go look at his high school highlights, I mean, he's a guy running around, throwing off platform, like, you know, again, not to put this level of expectation on him, but he looks, some of the throws that he made, you'd be like, all right, well, that's a guy who clearly, you know, like all the kids now look at Steph Curry and take deep threes. This is a guy that's watching like what the Patrick Mahomes of the world do in the NFL and throwing the ball like that. And the coaches definitely believe that he's somebody that can really sling it like that. But the thing at K-State has been, ever since Tyler Lockett left, which was in 2014, the receiving room has been kind of underwhelming. Some of that's based on just scheme and the style that they were playing, certainly with Bill Snyder at the end as he tailed off. In Snyder 2.0, it was just kind of a boring style of offense and not really conducive to receiver success. It's gotten better. They've come a long ways as far as that goes, but they did lose Ben Sinnott, who was a second-round draft pick of the Redskins, to the NFL. So they've got to replace a big weapon there. They have young talent, again, the theme at receiver, but those guys need to step up. And a guy like Jace Brown, who showed potential to be, I think, K-State's best route runner and maybe best receiver since Tyler Lockett, toward the end of last year, he's going to need to be a dude. And so I would point to how does the passing game look and how are they going to be on the defensive line, particularly up the middle?
When you look at the schedule, I mean, they get Kansas at home, don't have to play Utah, who is the favorite to win the conference. They do have to go to Boulder, which is, you know, we'll see what that looks like. Oklahoma State is another tough one, but the schedule, you know, fairly manageable. They get Arizona, but early in the year with a new system, really good quarterback in Fafita. But like, you know, I think the schedule sets up fairly well for them. Like, you know, Big 12 again, wide open, so no, you can't take anybody lightly, I suppose. But man, they should start out, I think, fairly well. I know that Arizona and Oklahoma State are both early, and then, you know, I think they should end on a pretty good streak. It's kind of what you do in the middle that'll matter. But am I reading that wrong? I think the schedule is not the worst for Kansas State this year.
No, yeah, the word I've been using is just manageable. I think they have a pretty manageable schedule. Even look, obviously compared to an SEC schedule or perhaps a Big Ten schedule, it's going to look manageable to a lot of people. But even relative to Big 12 schedules, I think it's fairly manageable. If you go look at like West Virginia's schedule this year, I think they probably have the toughest in the league. It certainly is not that. Yes, missing Utah helps. Getting Oklahoma State at home helps. But it will be tricky. I mean, look, the year K-State won the Big 12 2 years ago, they lost at home to Tulane. And they've got to go to Tulane this year in the non-con, even before the Arizona game, which the Arizona game is a non-conference game. Weird scheduling quirk. They had it scheduled before Arizona joined the league. So that's a non-con game. Won't count toward the league standings, but, I mean, that'll be, dude, I mean, Arizona's got dudes. I mean, Fafita, McMillan, obviously, but they've got one of the best corners in the country. They've got some players, so that if Brent Brennan is really up to snuff, that can be a really tough test on a Friday night in a game that I think a lot of people are going to watch in September. Look, Iowa State has been a really not only tough team for K-State to play, but particularly going to Ames. That has been a brutal road trip. It's at the end of the year. It's a pretty bitter rivalry these days between K-State and Iowa State. And Kansas, like if Jalen Daniels stays healthy, I mean, Kansas is going to be a real beast to deal with, even though the game is in Manhattan. So I can make you a case that there are plenty of losable games on the schedule, but it's also, if you were to go through it right now, I think you would say K-State's probably a favorite in every single game right now at the beginning of the year. If you were to take everyone one by one, sans maybe that game in Ames, I don't know how exactly Vegas would feel about that one. And that was, I mean, candidly, that was K-State's worst game of the year last year at home against Iowa State. Probably should not have lost that game in the snow game, and it was pretty awful performance. So. Based on that, I think it's fine. I think it's manageable. I don't think it's one that you should be really complaining too much about, at least the way that we look at it right now, before we know exactly what all these teams are going to be.
John, I usually appreciate you for being really measured, and I think, like, you know, in an age of hot takes and clickbait and which I even participate in some. I think what I like about you a lot is that you are measured, and I think you kind of see the both sides of certain things. So I'm going to ask you to not do that real quick. What's your hottest take? What's your most bold prediction for Kansas State this year?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I do try to be pretty measured, although I'm sure you'll find some out there that would tell you that I am not. I mean, this maybe is not that hot of a take because people are really on board with this, but like I think Avery Johnson will 100% live up to the hype. Like I think that guy is going to be, if not the first team All Big 12 quarterback this year, he will be in contention for that. It's hard because it's crowded, right? I mean, Shador is going to be all over NFL draft boards, and even if Colorado is not as great as many of the Colorado truthers think that they are going to be, I mean, he's still probably going to have a really good year. Noah Fafita that guy is awesome. I loved watching him play last year. Jalen Daniels, and he's healthy, total stud. But like, I believe in Avery Johnson as much as I have believed in any K-State player really that I can remember. You know, I mean, Deuce Vaughn, for instance, who was fabulous. I heard the same types of things about him really early on, and it did not take long to get on board with that. Same type of thing here, except at quarterback, which just amplifies what that can do for your team. He is just like, you know, interviewed him a couple times now, but especially talking to him in Vegas at Big 12 Media Days, he's just got this vibe about him. And I know people will roll their eyes at that and probably call me a homer, but he's so calm. He's completely unflappable, not bothered by anything. Even when you're interviewing him, you know, he's just chill. And you talk to all his teammates, they're like, yeah, in the huddle, honestly, like he's like the most chill guy we've ever been around. He's just got this demeanor about him. And, you know, he took all of his teammates this past weekend. He used some of his NIL money to pay for his teammates to just go on like a retreat. I think they went to Kansas City somewhere. And just kind of taking a page out of the Patrick Mahomes playbook, something he's done where he takes the guys to Texas in the offseason, all the skill guys, and works with them. He just did that this past weekend for all of his guys on the team. Everything I've heard about the guy from coaches and people around the program who are usually a little bit more measured, seems to be that everybody thinks the sky really is the limit for him. So I'm just going to say that I think Avery Johnson will be ready to step into it and have a phenomenal year this year, and it's not really going to be a 1 year waiting period for him.
I like it. We're even measured a little bit in your bold prediction, but yeah. we'll work on it. But I like it a lot, and I appreciate your time, man. Where can people follow you and find you for not only college football but more K-State stuff too? Yeah, so if people are looking for the K-State content, it's the 3 Mod podcast, which is on KC Sports Network. You can find that wherever it is that you find podcasts. I'm sure K-State fans will know we say EMAW, so you just tack on a 3 to the beginning of EMAW there. And if you're looking for more just realignment content, Big 12 content in general, the YouTube channel, my name, John Kurtz, JOHNKURTZ. That is a good way to find me as well. And then on Twitter, @JLKurtz. And if you're a Big 12 fan and you want Big 12 news in your inbox multiple times a week, sign up for the Open for Business newsletter. It's ofbnews.com. Awesome. Thanks, John. Anytime.